because I think that's better.
Okay.
But we're live now, so I just want to check.
Yeah.
I told people already that we will be back, so hold on.
Anyone tuned in yet?
I'm now going to open it on my mobile phone so I can see it because it's not handy for me to see it
Oh,
in
okay.
the
Okay.
software. Hold on. Let me go to my channel. By the way, if you're already here, viewer, let us know in the live chat because I'm going to the live chat now to check. Okay, hold on. Okay. I don't think you need to introduce yourself this time because people. Yes, it's a live chat. Okay, there's one individual. Semiramis is there, so that is good. Okay, so we've been online for how long have we been in here for? About 2-3 minutes already. So what I suggest we do is that we just wait for a few more minutes till more people come in, and then we'll just start with the live stream. Well, there are 3 people in now. That's good. If you're here, let us know in the live chat, please, that you're here. I've asked to the live chat now. Near here, you only have your mobile phone, right?
Yeah.
There's no possibility. Okay, no. Um, okay, no. Then that's going to be a bit difficult for you then. But anyway, I have the live chat, so if necessary, I can. How do I say? I can
No,
put out to you something
no,
says.
I can see I can see the live chat.
Oh, so you opened YouTube simultaneously to
Yeah.
okay. Now that is good. That's good news.
Yeah, I can see some arise.
Okay, that is good. That's good. So how many people do we have now in? We have we have 3. Good. How long ago is it that I thought that I closed the previous live stream? Because I thought that within 30 minutes or 40 minutes we'll be online. So I expect all the 20 people to be here also. But you know what? Or else we can just start, and those that come in later come
I think
later.
we might. Yeah.
Okay. So what we are going to talk about in this live stream is about how to apply intuition in your daily life. Okay, but first, before we do that, Near here is from the United Kingdom, and he is going to talk a bit about how the situation is in Britain from a spiritual point of view and what's unfolding right now in British society. And we're going to use that as a basis for this live stream. So Near here, you're on the move.
Okay, so at the moment, the whole Brexit thing is being put in the background. There's this 2 tier of the corona restrictions. So you basically got stay at home 1, and now you got stay at home 2. So what the system tends to do, they tend to brand things. So social movements and government operations can be branded in the same way that Hollywood
Mm-hmm.
brands things. So just like you got Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2, and it's the same way you've got the Greek theater, and the whole world is a stage. So it's like a Jesuit
Mm-hmm.
theater, and things that people do. Again, that's why you got predictive programming as well, and then you've got movies like Contagion and so forth, and they're telling you various things, and as you might know, you've got the pharmaceutical.
Near here, you're there? Hello? Near here. Hope I didn't lost him. One moment, believers. I need to contact this believer. One thing, believers, near here is using Wi-Fi. I'm using cable internet, so mine is more stable than his. So I've just contacted him to see if he's still around. Okay. So anyway, Nair will be back very soon. He will rejoin the chat, the conversation. But what Nair just explained is that the world likes to brand things, and I want to highlight that for a moment. Branding is really codifying something. When you codify something, you give it a label, and this labeling is for people to identify it. And when people identify it, people tend to become attached to it. So let me give an example of branding. Let's say there is this riot in New York, and it's in the 18th century. The riots keep going on and on and on, and people keep complaining about taxes. So then, what the government can do is say this is a American Revolution. They brand it. So every time you hear American Revolution, you think about the riots that happened in New York in the 18th century. But there is another thing that comes along with branding, and that is that when you brand something, you now have the option to build a myth around it. For example, you had the branding of those riots in the 1770s as the American Revolution, even though those British young men just wanted a better share of the wealth of the British Empire. Okay? So, you branded the American Revolution, and then you attached a meaning to this brand saying this is for the freedom of the people. Okay? So now you use this term American Revolution that which you used to brand that those riots was going on. So every time people hear about the American Revolution, they think that it was some fight for freedom. But that's not the case. So when people talk about the American Revolution, others tend to think that they are talking about oh, here it's back, praise the Lord. Others are thinking about that you're talking about the fight for freedom from the American people. But there's the thing, there was no American people back then, just British folks rioting in the British colonies in North America. So now you conceal the fact that the United States was really a confederacy that was established against the will of the British people that lived there. And generations of people that live in the United States today, they seriously believe that there was such a thing as an American Revolution in which the white British folks fought for their freedom from British tyranny. And this myth that they fought for their freedom from British tyranny gives present Americans a sense of pride that they are American. But here's the thing, that sense of pride is based on a myth, because indeed there were riots in the British colonies in North America, but they were not about fighting for freedom or anything like that. People were just upset and they were unloading on the streets. And then you had Benjamin Franklin and those other British knights. They decided to take advantage of it to make propaganda for this new country called the United States. And later, the King of Great Britain, George III, validated this by granting independence to the United States, while retaining the economic and financial leverage over the new country. And that's the part they don't tell you in history books, that Great Britain retained the financial leverage over the new country called the United States. Okay? So, that's how branding works. Okay, so near here fell out, so I explained a bit what bonding is. So near here, continue where you left off, please. You were talking about the corona, about they branded it for the stay-at-home one. To yes, continue. No, no, it's good that you've mentioned all of this because you went right into the subject I wanted to talk about, and that is that the branding that happens in the world is meant to blind you from what's really going on. And here's the thing, your intuition as a human being pierces right through the branding. For example, I'm talking about Americans now, people from the United States, people outside the United States, when they heard the first time about the American Revolution, it's likely in a history class at school. And they just read through it. Okay, American Revolution fought against Britain because they had too much taxes and all. But it was in the context of you have to know this to pass the text. Okay? But likely they wouldn't talk about it outside of that context. But if you begin to talk outside that context of people fighting because they pay too much taxes, and you look at the map of the world and realize, hold on a minute. The Spanish Empire governed the world. Most of North America was Spanish. The Spanish Empire was Roman Catholic. You guys were Protestant, and it was a big thing between Protestants and Roman Catholics still at that time. So, how is it possible that the Protestant people are willing to endanger themselves to become more dependent on a Catholic system? If you have a Protestant population and they're opposed to Roman Catholicism, the last thing they would want to do is to weaken themselves internally so that the Roman Catholic power called the Spanish Empire gets a better hold of them. I mean, look at history. The United States was recognized under the pressure of the Spanish Empire. So when you look at that, you would think, huh? This is contradicting. Your inner radar hints to you that something is wrong with his story. But what often happens is that when we get a myth that's presented to us, we don't look at the facts in the myth because every myth contains a fact. Okay, for example, the myth of the American Revolution, the fact is there were riots throughout the British colonies there. And as a result, afterwards, the British politicians established a country called the United States. Those are facts. But it's not true that it was there as an initiative from the people because they wanted freedom for Britain. Okay, that's the twist of the facts. So every myth contains real facts that are twisted in how the facts are mentioned. Okay, but your intuition can hint to you, if you look at the context of what you're being told, that something doesn't add up. So that's what I wanted to hint to. So the same you can say about this whole Brexit thing, which is now on hold in the United States, in Great Britain. United States has other issues with Trump and all of that. So you mentioned that Brexit is more on the background because the whole COVID thing is more hot now. Do you think that when Britain crashes out, because I think Britain will crash out of the Britain is already out of the EU, but it's still in a transition phase. When the transition phase ends in the 1st of January, likely will crash out because there's still no deal from the UK towards the EU, nor the other way around. Do you think that when Britain crashes out, that this whole COVID thing will go to the background, or do you think that the COVID thing will remain in the front? And here's the thing, I'm glad you spoke about this. The whole continent of, let me say, the whole sub-Saharan Africa. I'm not talking about the Arab nations in the north of Africa. I'm talking about sub-Saharan Africa, so Africa below the Sahara Desert, which is Black Africa. Okay? Black Africa in total has around 43,000 deaths of corona till now. And when you look at it, Britain has more deaths of corona than the whole, almost whole continent of Africa. So when you look at it, those African nations, despite all the afflictions they have and tribal conflicts, they managed this pandemic far better than the West did. If you look at Italy, you look at the Netherlands, you look at the United States, all those, we can say white countries, they failed miserably. Okay? So how is it that Africa managed this crisis far better than the West, but nobody talks about it? Nobody says, you know what, we should learn from the Africans. The Africans manage this very well. No, because it's black people that manage it well, now they can't acknowledge it. That is a new development that came out. And look, let me clarify one thing to the to the listeners here. We are not saying that the whole pandemic is made up, because there are people dying, so something is going on. So we're not saying that there is no flu virus that is mutated, because we know that there were Chinese laboratories experimenting with viruses. We know that. Okay, such things have been going on. But what we have explained past months is that this whole pandemic is a kind of a brand they gave to it, the COVID-19 pandemic or corona pandemic. It's a branding, and the way they manage it is like a political chess game. Okay, they don't deal with it as a health crisis; they deal with it as a political crisis, and that's what we've been pointing out to our listeners, that something is wrong with this pandemic. Are we saying that the people that died never had the virus? We're not saying that. Are we saying that it's all made up? No, because there are people that really literally die, but why they all die, it may not be what the media is telling us. So we are quite skeptical about it. And as I mentioned before, the way they deal with this is like a political chess game. If it was a real health crisis, they would have dealt with it far more consistently. And Sub-Saharan Africa treated this as a health crisis, and they managed it well. But when you look at the United States, you look at the Western countries, they treat it like a political chess game. Why? Because there are more interests involved. Okay? And it is even revealed that they have been, they've been promoting solutions that are not even medically sound. For example, they are promoting a vaccine, even though a proper vaccine is not even developed yet. And such kind of stuff. It's even proven that wearing a mask all day long is not good for your lungs. So you have all these contradictions in how they deal with this crisis, that anyone who look at it will say there's more going on than just a flu virus that's killing people. Okay, but okay, I ran it a bit too much about the COVID-19 thing, because I wanted to be able to explain what our position is. You're there, near here? So, by the way, hold on near here. Can everyone hear near here? Because I can hear you clearly. Can you say something? I'm going to listen on the on my mobile phone, see if I can hear you. Can you say something? I'm going to listen on my mobile phone, see if I can hear you. Can you say something? I'm going to listen on my mobile phone, see if I can hear you. Hold on. So people are not able to hear near. Okay. Let me check what that can be. Hold on. Say something now near here.
Yeah. I'm here. Here. Can you hear me? 1 2 1 2.
People in the live chat, let us know if you can hear near here. Okay. 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 So near here, continue.
Yeah, so basically, whether there's a virus or not, there's likely to be something, but it's being politically exploited. So there's many different things that you can get out of something like this. So they can commit mass genocide or get rid of a particular type of person that is a political challenge, and they can claim it's coronavirus with and make mass graves for them, and so they can do a secret genocide with this kind of cover. And also, because everyone's wearing masks, normally people would wear a mask to rob a bank. But now it's now the opposite. If you're not wearing a mask, you get into trouble. So anybody who can do something anonymously. So there's a lot of things that can be done. And on top of that, they can use it to quarantine people, and they can do shock testing to see how people respond. That's why, again, they're doing stage 1 and stage 2 to see how obedient people are to behave like cattle. And then once people accept it, and the black magic basically works, because once people become obedient and they believe the hysteria, they can increase the tyranny if we allow it, if we don't start exposing the hoax.
Yes, because this is what people need to understand. When it comes to a crisis, okay, it's often not what you think it is. And that is what a lot of people doesn't get through to a lot of folks. Let me explain. If there is in a country a lot of trash on the streets, then obviously there's a lot of wealth also, because trash is the result of leftovers of food or things people throw away. So if there's a lot of trash on the streets, then people must ask, why are we wasting our wealth? But that question is not asked. Instead, people begin to murmur and complain about the rubbish in the streets, and they're even going to point out now that there is this organization that is taking care of it without asking for it. And then people are going to focus on the mafia, who's taking advantage of all the rubbish in the streets. And then now the whole agenda becomes to fight that mafia from getting hold on that community. But hold on a minute. That mafia organization wouldn't be able to take advantage of the community if there was no trash crisis to begin with. And what is the root of the trash crisis? People mismanage their wealth. Okay, there's some attitude that's wrong within the people. So what happens then is that politicians will develop an agenda out of the situation, in which everything is set against that mafia being there, but the context is the mafia is there because they're dealing with a problem that the people cause and that the people don't want to face. Because if people would not squander their wealth, there wouldn't be that much rubbish on the streets. And if people cared more about their environment, it wouldn't have happened anyway. So the real question is, how come the mafia is able to benefit from all that trash on the streets? Because if the people were more responsible, there wouldn't be that much trash. And in a similar way, it is with this COVID-19 thing. Okay, people are so focused on avoiding debt, and the mainstream media has been scaring people all the time. So what is going on now is that there is this explosion of fear that happened in the masses this year, and that has a spiritual origin. Okay, because it's not natural how all these people are so afraid. They go to a supermarket, they purchase all the toilet paper. I'm sorry, but if there's a flu virus killing people, toilet paper is not going to help you. Yet people become so hysterical that they are doing a lot of stuff that normally they wouldn't do. And listen to what I'm saying now, believers. If this is about health, all those measures, look at this. Smoking causes the deaths of around 400,000 people a year worldwide. And 20,000 of those are people who are not smoking directly, but are affected by the smoke of smokers. So there are people smoking, and that's why there are like 400,000 people dying of it every year. So those that are smoking know that they're harming their own health. Why are they doing it? Often people tell you they're coping with stress. Oh, so there are psychological issues that play a role. And if there is, so this whole phenomenon that people are smoking is the result of unprocessed psychological issues. So if it's a coping mechanism that millions of people have, that means that there are millions of people who are not mentally sound. And if that's the case, if you want to prevent those 400,000 deaths a year, you should look at what's psychologically afflicting the people. That means that your society doesn't function properly. So if it's really about health, you would reconstruct your societies so that people don't even feel the urge to smoke anymore to deal with psychological stress. Okay? And if you want to do something about it, you may even ban cigarettes and then deal with the root issue of what's going on. But have they ever done that? Address the psychological factors behind smoking and finding and addressing them to deal with them? No, they haven't. They don't even want to think about banning cigarettes because it goes against the free choice of people, so-called. So this whole, all those lockdowns go on, it has nothing to do with health. That is what communists think it's about, but it's really to serve another political and public agenda. And before I explain what the political and public agenda is, now to recognize it too, I will let Nir here do the talk again.
The topic. Okay, I can turn it up. On the topic of tobacco, and they also want children to smoke if they could. Not only would they not want to get rid of tobacco, they always need problem reaction solution, and drugs is one of the main, very consistent solutions. In order for drug dealers to stay in business, they need to make sure that the issues, the mental issues, and the need for relief are always there. So they're doing the same thing with drugs as they are with, the sodomite and pedophile agenda. They want children to be involved in drugs and smoking and so forth, but they can't get away with it again because of the influence of the gospel.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
So what? Ask me more specific questions.
No, I want you to give some to elaborate on what I just said. And if you have more to elaborate, you can do it. Then I will explain what a public agenda is and what a political agenda is, so that believers will know how to recognize the two when they emerge in society. So do you have more to elaborate on what I just explained?
Yeah, so when it comes, it's all about opportunism. So basically, there's a problem, and criminal organizations can get involved, government organizations can get involved. There will always be scapegoats, and basically, if people don't see what's going on and disturb it, then it will push forward very, very easily. And if once people know what's going on, then it will be more difficult. They have to keep changing their agenda, and then eventually they might have to scatter and give up what they're doing. So yeah, again, it's just a matter of just looking for opportunities to push their agenda forward. and the final agenda is basically to get people into so much fear that they surrender to a military power structure, which will be run by the Catholic system, who worship Apollo. So basically, they want people to worship Satan. So that's what fear is all about, anyway. Because if you live in fear, you're basically donating energy to evil spirits.
Yes, that's correct. And what I'm saying this. I'm going to explain what the public agenda is and what the political agenda is, and just understand the following, listeners. The world is a construct of fleeing. Worldlings want to flee. They don't want to face things. They want to deal with things. Just want to flee. But this is not possible 24/7. So worldlings need to get along. That's why worldlings have this construct called society, in which they flee in patterns, and everyone who does not adhere to this pattern is killed or life is made hard on them. Okay? So now you know what society is. Let's talk about a public agenda. Let's say you have a flat complex where you have people living there. You have like 500 people living in that flat, and you have this one single woman that lives in a tiny room in that flat complex, and she becomes the target of negative contention from her neighbor, who is a man in his 40s who's drinking all the time. Now, let's say that she doesn't bother with it and she ignores it. Other people notice it, but they don't want to be bothered with it also. Eventually, that man begins to escalate against that single woman, and because people don't want to become the target of that man's rage, they validate his anger against that other woman, and before you know it, everyone in that flat complex blames her for triggering that drunken man. Even though she never triggered him, even though she never even paid attention to him, the man should be handed over to a psychologist so that he can face his issues, but instead he preferred to dump on her, and because others just want to be left alone, they begin to enable the dumping on her, and eventually everyone began to dump on her. So now you have a public agenda. The public agenda is twofold. One, people don't want to admit their own cowardice, that they don't want to admit that they didn't intervene in that man's life when he needed psychological help. So they don't want to admit their own failure. And secondly, they want this woman to be gone. Okay, so they blame the woman and they want her to be gone. So that's a public agenda, when a group of people agree together against a victim. And they agree against the victim because they don't want to admit their own failures. So they agree against the victim, and they all want to get a dopamine rush. They all want to get relief from expelling or killing the victim. That's a public agenda. Now, when a public agenda takes too long to complete, when it takes too long to evict the woman or the man or whoever the victim is, and let's say the victim fights back and it takes too long, this frustration is going to cause escalations within the people. So now people are going to escalate against their own housemates, against their wives, against their husbands, against their children. So now there's domestic violence all over the place. And now everyone in that community is bothered by the conflict. Everyone is harmed by it. The conflict escalated, and now people want the institutions to do something about it. Now it has become a political agenda. Now the cops are involved. Now the pagan courthouse is involved. Now the local church are involved. Now you have institutions involved in it, and the institutions are likely to choose the side of the public against that single victim, because the institutions know very well that people are not willing to admit their own faults, and now the conflict escalates. Now you have various conflicts in the community, and the institutions are not capable of dealing with all of them at the same time, so they'll agree with the pattern against that one woman to get her expelled. So you had dumping that became a public agenda. Everyone agreed against the scapegoat, and now it has become a political agenda when the public agenda was not executed speedily enough. And once it has become politicized on the political agenda, now you have institutions that take charge of how the victimization happens. So is there anything you want to add to this near here?
So political policy, corporate policies, is basically people become more comfortable. It's like the same way when, you know, people observe that powerful people are doing something, and they're basically just given a license to carry out the agenda. So, and everything starts with the religion that they follow. So again, it's just a filtering down of the agenda of those who worship those spirits, the pagans basically. And so the political level is more of like a religious level, but it's just the front of the religious level, and then the institutions carry out that agenda, and that affects the public, and then the public wants to fit in and to stay safe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because here's the thing: believers ought to recognize when a public agenda has been established. I've spoken about demonic forces before. Now, demonic forces can come into being by establishing public agendas. There is no demonic force without a public agenda. A demonic force is a clogging of people who are bitter against someone or against something. Okay, so every demonic force comes into existence with an agenda, and that agenda is the public agenda. So if you are the target of psychic violence, that means that there are people out there who want you dead, or they want harm to befall you so that they can get narcissistic relief, narcissistic supply. So that is the agenda. And it's always twofold. They want to hide their own behind, and they want to put the blame on you. Okay? So now you know there is a public agenda against you. Because a public agenda is always twofold: to hide the inconsistencies or failures of the public, of the population, and to put the weight on the victim. It's always twofold. So believers, when a public agenda is formed, even if it's not against you, then realize there is danger. And that danger, unless we counter it with prayer, decrees, and declarations and fasting, that public agenda will be politicized. And once it's politicized, it can even continue for generations, and can even be ingrained into culture. And by the way, near here, when you want to enter in and elaborate or add, or you can just let me know, and you can just do your talk, okay?
Okay.
So that's why we believers, we must pay attention to our surroundings. If there is a public agenda against a worldling, we should not support it, and we should shut it down. Okay? Because if we don't shut it down and we allow it to continue, indirectly we contributed to it becoming politicized. And once it's politicized, it may even end up in legislation, and now you will have a legal stronghold that will haunt people for the next generations. So
and if believers get involved in that, that means we'll be serving the exact opposite purpose of what we started, because when believers spread the gospel, we shut down the scapegoating systems. So the last thing that believers should be involved in is something that involves scapegoating. We should be showing people the solution, and we should basically bring repercussions in the spirit against anybody who uses scapegoating, because that is satanic. Any scapegoating is satanic.
Yes. And here's the thing: as believers, also should look at the context. For a commoner, it's easy to blame the government for everything that goes on if the government makes bad policies, and rightly so. The policies of the government affect you, so you should blame the government. You should, but so when you have commoners that keep blaming the government, they're not scapegoating; they're being factual, okay? Because the government is involved. But what the commoners must realize is that, okay, but that didn't start with the government; it started with us, okay? And that's when you go deeper in it. So when you see people protesting in the streets, it's not that they just don't want solutions. Some of them just don't know what else to do, about to explode, and to show that this needs to stop. Okay? So we should also check the context of what's going on. Okay? Scapegoating is when someone really doesn't want to participate in any solution, and therefore they just want to unload. That is what scapegoating is. And when scapegoating goes on, we as believers enforce repercussions on it, and at the same time we enforce righteousness in the situation. So we don't just shut down the violence, we replace the violence with righteousness, with positive impact. So, what can you elaborate on this, or maybe there's a subject related to this that you want to discuss? Just throw out those variables on your mind.
Yeah. So yeah, holding governments accountable. Yeah. So we are the sword of justice. So part of that is we expose the unfruitful works of darkness. So speaking the truth in itself is judgment, because the lies basically are held up against it, and then people can see and make a choice. And people basically need to be given the options, and then that's when power can be released. So once you make decrees and declarations, it will be in relation to the choices that people have made. So that's why it's important to expose the unfruitful works of darkness.
Yes. And near here, I don't know if you watched my latest live streams. There was this live stream, I believe yesterday or the day before yesterday. Let me check on my, it's called Not Every Obstacle is Meant for You to Overcome.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
And have you seen When Satan Conceits, Beware?
Yeah.
Okay, because the thing is, what I've explained is that there are times we encounter obstacles that are really distractions. And when we don't recognize the distraction, what it is, we may end up sponsoring a fight that we should have avoided. And I've also made a video, probably you've seen that also. And let me check what the video is, what I call the video. The video was called, okay, let me go here. Black Magic Trick, selling something that doesn't exist. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Okay, now,
Yeah.
what was the first thing you thought remarkable about the message I've brought over there?
In the black magic one, or
Yes,
the
that video.
live streams?
That video about the black magic trick.
If I remember correctly, yeah. So it's all about making people. You mentioned it before in previous messages. It's you basically show people the truth, and then they can blackmail you later because you've given consent. So
yes, the thing is, it's not literal consent you've given to what they're about to do, but they just give you an opportunity to shut them down, and when you miss this opportunity, they can use this fact to blackmail others into agreeing against you. For example, if someone, let's say, if someone mentioned before that they didn't like you over and over again, that's your time to oppose their negative projection on you. But if you agree that they have the right to project negativity on you, then later when they physically assault you, people say, but I never liked him, I always said that, so this is his problem, he should have avoided me. And weird, quite weird, worldlings tend to agree with it. Instead of worldlings saying, no, we should have never projected negatively on him to begin with, let alone act out your negative projections, the world will agree. Why? Because the violator would say, I hinted that I was wrong, but the victim never did something about it. And then, because the people in the world want to flee, they tend to agree with the perpetrator. That's how they do it down here. Not that it's ever legitimate, it's not, but that's what they do.
Yeah, and that's what predictive programming is as well. It's basically they keep showing you something, so by the time it happens, you accept it. And then another level of that is shock testing. So what narcissistic abuse do as well, they do something very, very extreme to see, and if the person doesn't retaliate or take action, then they'll step it up a level. So again, black magic is more like a contractual version of that. They'll just like do something and put something in small print, and then they'll kind of tell you, and then they'll say, well, you should have educated yourself, isn't it? It's the same way when you're dealing with the law, isn't it? Like the law just that you don't understand the language, and because basically that's what democracy is. Democracy basically is saying it's up to you to find out what things mean. Like you're allowed to know, but if you don't, then it's your fault if you basically get trapped and even abused and killed because of it.
Yes, because in democracy they blame the victim, and it goes quite easily to blame the victim because democracy gives you the impression that the people rule. If the people rule, that means the people must be responsible for how they rule themselves, right? So then you can expect the people to investigate what's going on, which is correct. But here's the thing: when they present a legal text to you, they come with all that ritual language. And here's the thing: the moment they come with all that ritual language, you as a com should say, oh, but hold on a minute. Why do you use all those ritual difficult words when it relates to, if it's about the safety and well functioning of our communities, we don't speak that ritual high language. Why do you make your documents in such high advanced language, at least advanced for you? If a commoner asks that question, they won't be able to justify themselves. Okay, they don't know what to answer it. Okay, so but commoners don't do that. Commoners just want things to work, and that is the part of the blackmail that they use against the masses. Okay, for example, I read the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia. I'm not sure how many teenagers or even adults in Australia have read the Constitution of Australia. I dare to say most haven't. They grew up in Australia, and they went to school. They were told that they need to conform to laws and to rules, and if they do, they'll get rewarded. If they don't, they'll end up in jail. So people just get along, and that's it. How many Australians literally went and checked the historical documents that formed their nation? Okay? And let me tell you, when I read the Constitution of Australia, oh man, I was shocked. That document, it was written in 1900 in the British Parliament. So it wasn't even an initiative from people living in Australia. It was an initiative from the British Parliament. So it was a political move by the British. And this document, that became the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia, it did the following. It excluded the British population in the continent of Australia from having access to the economy of the British Empire. Why? Because before that, you had crown colonies on the continent, and as a crown colony, you are the extension of the UK. And as an extension, you actually belong to the UK. Okay? So, as extension of the UK, they demanded a lot of stuff from the UK. And they also demanded to participate in the trade in India and in Canada and all the other parts of the British Empire. But the British Parliament didn't want this. They were using the British population in Australia like, they were treating Australia like a plantation. And they wanted to continue to do this. But now, the public was revolting and rioting down there at the end of the 1890s. So the British leaders, like probably under the advice of the Jesuits, came up with this Declaration of Independence that became the Constitution. And this Constitution really turned the British colonies on the continent of Australia into a single federal kingdom. But this federal kingdom was governed by the British Parliament. So you have a federal kingdom governed by the British Parliament, and the citizens of this kingdom, called Australians, have no say in how the British Parliament governs it, because the British Parliament, only British citizens or British nationals can vote for that, not Australians. So you had British companies that had kept on exploiting the Australian population, but politically the Australians were voting and dealing with the local politicians, even though it was the British Parliament that governed Australia indirectly. And this ended in 1986. Okay? So that means that from 1901 till 1986, for 85 years, the Australian population was lied to that they were independent. Britain still extorted and exploited them like a plantation. It was on the pressure of the what would become the European Union that Britain had to give up this imperial leverage. But that, and this is all documented. Okay, so many Australians don't even know this. Yet they call themselves Australians. They want you to respect their flag. And if you enter Australia, they tell you need to conform to Australia because you're in Australia. You're in our country. Okay, but it's your country, but you don't know the basics of how your country is formed and how your country is run. Does that add up to you, Nyron? I mean, near here?
No.
And that,
no, independence is one of the main Jesuit games anyway. So you have the two branches. You have the political tyranny, and then you've got the liberation theology, which is part of social justice by the Jesuit Luigi Tapparelli. So basically, you got these two things fighting, and it's basically problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialectic, and then it resolves in a situation where you're worse off free than when you were a slave. Because at least when you were a slave, you knew you were a slave. But now you got proud slaves now who are in a worse situation that they were trapped in by all this legal language and religious theological language that they didn't understand.
And here's the thing about the blackmail that those satanic, I don't want to call them rulers, those satanic leaders are using. For example, the Netherlands called the Kingdom of the Netherlands because it's a kingdom. You have a king on the throne. Okay? France called the Republic of France, République de France. Why? Because it's a republic. You don't have, the head of state is selected by the knights. That's a republic. Okay? So in the name, you're told what you're dealing with. Now, in the Spanish Empire, you had the Kingdom of Guatemala, Kingdom of Mexico, Kingdom of New Granada. Those were kingdoms who were in a union with the Spanish kingdoms in Europe. Okay? But they were called kingdom. You knew what you were dealing with, and you were validated as an autonomous unit of all. When you look at the British Empire, Australia was called the Commonwealth of Australia, not the Kingdom of Australia, even though you had a king on the throne. So commoners should ask, why are we called a commonwealth and not a kingdom, even though we have a king on the throne? In the Parliament of Australia, you have two thrones, one for the king and one for the queen, but they're never around, so you have a governor general over here. Why are we a kingdom but we call it a commonwealth? Then you should ask, what is a commonwealth? And when they figure out what a commonwealth is, you can watch in a dictionary, you look in a dictionary or look for it online. A commonwealth is a region that's governed by another region. But internally, that region is allowed to have its own say, but externally, they are dependent on someone else. So if Australians would just ask, why are we called the Commonwealth? They will figure out the truth very quickly. So I'm not looking down on Australians or anything like that, because I also have Australian believers who are watching this. I'm just using the example of Australia to point out to people how the blackmail is done. Because I, as an outsider, probably because I'm an outsider, I'm really baffled how Australians don't ask those practical questions of the situation. And that is why we as believers must ask the constructive questions. You can elaborate.
Yeah, and constructive questions, they basically make liars uncomfortable as well. So just by asking the question, people will already start to reevaluate their agenda, even if you haven't sought after any answers. So just the asking of the question can cause scam artists to scatter. So that's why people who choose to believe lies, it's like, you know, the the pagan system, they laugh at them because they're like, no, why is it so easy?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and they know that those people have no interest in seeking the truth, and therefore, they are not seeking a relationship with Christ, which is how it would eventually end up if you seek the truth.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. And the thing is, when you look at it, when you watch this situation, well, if a commoner on the streets would approach you and they would demand something from you, you wouldn't just think, I need to give in to it. If someone comes to you and tells you that they want your wallet, you're going to ask, oh, hold on a minute, why do you want my wallet? Where I have my ID in, my bank cards, and my money, and my sometimes even your keys. Why do you want my wallet? You're going to ask why, right? You're not just going to hand over your wallet because as a type of proof that you don't think ill of other people. Even if you don't think ill of other people, why do they need your wallet? Okay? It's a legitimate question to ask. But when it comes to worldlings in general, the system says, give me your life. And commoners say, here it is. That's the act of commoners. They don't ask, hold on a minute, why do I need to hand in my life to work a 9 to 5 to get a piece of paper that you guys print, and without this piece of paper I die in the streets? Why should everything revolve around this piece of paper? Why do I need to hand in my life to get a piece of paper? And in handing in my life, I only have 1 or 2 weeks a year that I'm free. So as believers, we realize very quickly that worldlings are out of their mind. So, and that's why it's important for us to use our intuition. Because that's the number one thing about worldlings, they don't pay attention to their intuition. Because once your intuition hints something to you, whether good or bad, you now need to act on it to find out what's going on. And worldlings really, when they feel that something is off, they just want to be left alone, they flee. And it's this eternal fleeing of theirs that causes them to be trapped in all types of abusive situations. And as compensation,
And the word,
yes, okay, you can continue.
yeah, the word intuition means internal teacher. So tuition is basically teaching. So those who are born again have the full intuition because we're in line with our natural empathy and also the Holy Spirit, which is how we were designed in the first place. So, that's why gaslighting and, satanic brainwashing agendas is to basically just to stunt your natural spiritual communication so that, you don't function as you were designed.
Yes, and that is why believers should not, and I repeat, that's why believers should not, how to say, we should not take whatever worldlings tell us as truth. Why? Because those that don't follow Christ, they're not in the truth. They're fleeing. So because they're fleeing, they're not operating factually. Look, everything worldlings tell you, unless it's in a dangerous situation where they really need help, like for example, a mother has lost her child and she's asked for help, then you pay close attention to it. Apart from immediate dangerous situations, don't take anything worldlings tell you that seriously. Because most of the time, worldlings just want your attention to be relieved, or they just want to flee and they want to distract themselves. Because here's another thing. Those wizards that are running this war behind the scenes, there is one thing they absolutely can't stand about fallen mankind, and that is that fallen mankind tolerates any type of excuse as long as that excuse enables them to flee a situation. Okay, for example, if you have if you have a household and the father becomes physically violent and he beats the children and the children are frightened, then the environment should go to that home. They should arrest the man and tell him, listen, dude, what you're doing, escalating against children, are you out of your mind? If you want to fight, we will bring you to the box and you will fight a real man over there. What's going on? You're hitting children and all that. The community should hold him accountable. But the community often just don't want to be bothered. So if you're one of those children that grew up in an abusive household and you realize that the community did not assist you, don't brush it off and excuse them as saying, well, it was a private matter or this, that. No, the community neglected you. Face it that you're dealing with cowards. That's what they are. You don't have to confront them and look for a fight, but admit they are cowards. Okay? But what often happens in the world is that because people don't want to face how grievous the situation was, they just brush it off with distractions. And that's the thing that those wizards that govern this world really hate about worldlings. If something happened to you and it was quite painful, of course you're allowed to acknowledge it. That's natural, nobody can blame you. But don't gaslight yourself so you don't have to face how bad it is, because you not facing how bad it is not going to solve it. It's only going to get worse. So worldlings in general, they will gaslight themselves just so they can escape. Everything about worldlings is about escaping. So worldlings never really are interested in paying attention to intuition. They just want to know where to dump and where to escape. That's what they want to know. And here's the thing. When those wizards encounter real believers walking by faith, they are relieved. Not because they are great believers, because they are serving Satan, but because they finally see human beings who are realistic. And that's something we need to understand, believers, that most of the world is not realistic. They operate against their natural senses. And maybe you can elaborate on that near here?
But there's something on the screen about them banning diesel and petrol cars by 2030, and that's just another thing, another agenda that's being pushed as well, the climate change. And it's the same thing, isn't it? They use different agendas to control people's behavior. So they'll, control territory, claiming that they're protecting environments, and then they can close and use violence to enforce various things and put sanctions on people. So again, it's the same thing with the corona thing as well, controlling whether people stay in or stay out. And it's just another example of things that people don't question what the real agenda behind something actually is, because it always revolves around control. It's because commoners believe that the government actually cares about them. To an extent, they do care about the world not being completely destroyed, because they have to live on the earth themselves, but that's the only reason. They'll use humans as batteries, and obviously not for their own well-being.
That's a truth, because those sellouts of Satan, they live on the earth too. And they know that if those worldlings turn on each other, then it won't even be safe for them to be on the earth. So they want worldlings to get along on a basic level, and that's why they have those governments to provide substitute self-esteem for the public, just that the public has a base to get along. And that's why when you have predators that get out of hand, you have the police that picks them up and puts them in jail. That's the basic things they do. And commoners perceive this as caring for them. But when you look at it very carefully, it's not really caring for them. The shadow government cares for itself, and it needs the commoners to do that. That's what it's all about. And here's the thing. Commoners, they expect the government. Let me say this: commoners trust the government more than their fellow human beings. And to some extent, you can't blame them, because the government is an institution that has a set mode of operating. The government cannot be emotionally unstable, suddenly snap on you. Those around you can. So that is the basis of why worldlings just get along with so many stuff. They know that the government is corrupt. They know that the government scams them. But at least they know that the government needs them to exist. The government can only exist because there's a population over which they govern. So they know that somewhere the government is more stable than the people around them. But that's the thing with worldlings. If it's so that you prefer to rely on the government and on your fellow human beings, it means that there's something wrong with your fellow human beings. So admit what's wrong with them, and once you admit what's wrong with them, now you realize you need to have a solution. But commoners only won't admit there's something wrong with those around them. That's why commoners don't question anything. And that's why believers cannot really get ahead that much with commoners in the long run. Maybe you can share your experience with this issue.
Well, yes, truth seeking is a matter of, it's a matter of, because basically people who are against truth are basically narcissistic because they define reality, isn't it? That those who are not narcissistic, they realize there's stuff that is bigger than them, so they seek. And instead of attempting to define reality and then stonewall, and then obviously gaslighting is enforced stonewalling. So it's like somebody's refusing to stonewall like them, so they force it onto them. And then if they have the ability to use violence, they will use violence to shut down anything that doesn't reflect their version of reality, which is basically trying to flee from reality. And again, that's why they will hide from the face of the Lamb, because of the truth himself returning. So again, once a person realizes, there's different types of people and there's different levels of truth seekers. Some people, they want validation, so they join different groups because maybe the mainstream system has offended them in some way. So they're not necessarily truth seekers. They just want to do something different to say, okay, again, the rebel type. And then there's those who really just want to know the purpose for their existence, and eventually you would know when you're dealing with that type of person. If you become one as well, you'll recognize it.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing about this matter. When you're dealing with people that know that something is off, but they're not interested in solutions either, such people will often fake it as if they want solutions, if they want the truth. But eventually, when you come near the solution, they suddenly back down. And that's why we as believers, we must use our intuition daily to scan the people we are involved with. Because the earlier you recognize a faker, the better it is. If you find it out later when you're already deeply invested in them, it's going to be quite uncomfortable to move away from them. And that's the situation, unfortunately, that many believers are in now, because they've been listening to those pagan churches instead of listening to Christ. So I agree with you. Those worldlings, you need to know what you're dealing with. Because if you don't know what you're dealing with, then it's not a good position. And here's the thing. What those wizards do, that blackmail of the masses just so they can avoid consequences, that is what worldlings do all the time. Worldlings are more open in doing it because they feel they can get away with it. While the wizards know very well that they can't get away with it. They only do the blackmail part because they don't want the masses to turn on them and devour them. But even they know that, no. We cannot get away with this. But worldlings seriously and sincerely believe they can get away with blackmailing folks. So understand that the commoner is a direct danger to you, while the wizards are a delayed danger.
when it comes to the wizards controlling the masses, they have the sheep herding, but they also have the wolf hierarchy. So they know that the commoners want to fit in to stay safe. It's more like managing children. But when it comes to violence, when it comes to managing violence, they use incentives and people's desire to play God. So it's more like an extension of the demonic hierarchy and chief wizards, who are basically a military hierarchy. And what they will do is more volatile, because once they play God over someone, and then if they think they're too much in charge, then they'll have to get rid of them. So that's the only thing, because they don't actually realize that there is something above, and their arrogance is utilized, and that's how they get the energy for them to manage environments. So, for example, you'll have a local pagan leader. They'll have criminal gangs working in an environment, and then they might not realize who really controls the environment, the pagan groups. So if they don't listen to orders that come from higher up, they'll be removed. So again, wolves are controlled by military hierarchy, and the pride has to be managed. Whereas the sheep, the regular ones who are just looking for something to follow, they have to distract them so that they don't submit to Christ, and they basically just keep it, so that they're constantly looking for the next thing to impress, so that they can get the basics of survival.
Yes, it's a dual thing they're doing. They are distracting the commoners, and the the predators amongst the commoners. They lure them into those cults, just to manage the violence of the predators. Because if the predators have their way amongst the masses will soon realize, don't minute, those leaders of ours can't even protect us, so why would we adhere to them? So that's why them as leaders needs to deal with the predators amongst the public, or to win the trust of the public. And that is also why folks are so reluctant to admit that there's something wrong with this COVID-19 pandemic. Why? Because they see lockdowns happening, and they see that as a form of care. Oh, we're being protected against this evil virus out there. And that makes them feel comfortable, because worldlings, let me say like this, they're lost. They have no security. So all securities they have are false. So they hold on to control so much, and when something's out of their control, they want someone else to control it for them. Now, they should trust the Most High for this, but because they don't want to self-reflect, they prefer those anonymous civil servants that quote-unquote look after them. Because all worldlings want to be looked after, all of them. Even the loners, loners want that to happen. They all want to be looked after. That's a basic human desire every one of us have. So that is why using your intuition is very important. Because if believers would use their intuition, then what are we? We are like we would become like tools that is being swept around here and there, and it happens to many believers. When you use your intuition, believer, you will avoid a lot of bad situations you were not even aware existed. And that's why all of us need to be delivered from strongholds that hinder us from using our intuition. And near here, have you uploaded something recently on your channel?
I've re-uploaded the Emmanuel series, and I haven't uploaded anything new in the past 24 hours or 48 hours for that matter. Well, did you want me to
No, what I
To
was
mention the
thinking.
topic.
Now, just talk a little bit about your re-upload.
Oh, okay. Oh, you want me to talk about an upload?
Yeah, you have been re-uploading a lot lately. Can you explain to us why you're doing that
Yeah.
and what's the red line in it all?
The red line. Oh, yeah. The re-uploading is because when I first started the channel, there weren't that many, and a lot of times the things that I re-uploaded, they get quite a lot of views in relation to the first one, and when not everybody knows necessarily how to search the older videos, it's easier on the phone. Sometimes you can do the newest, the oldest, and the most popular searches, but a lot of the time it's hard to find some of the videos that are in the middle. Like even with your channel, like if people don't know how to search, there's certain videos. Probably there's videos of yours that I haven't seen at all yet, because by the time I found your channel, I think you probably had nearly 1,000. So again, so it's one of those things. It's like once you kind of remember something or a topic comes up, then you kind of re-upload to remind people of the topic and so forth.
That is correct. Let me see how long we've been on this live stream already. Let me check. We've been here for 1 hour and almost 20 minutes. Okay. Is there anything you want to share more about the intuition and following Christ?
So, talking about, you can see my video called "The Just Will Live by Faith." I talk about faith and how it relates to justice, because that's really what the intuition is, the internal teacher. Because justice is about maintaining life and truth. A lot of people think, when people hear justice, they think, oh, the Avengers, or punishment, crime and punishment. Those things tend to go together, but really justice is about maintaining life, because the God is the just one, Christ is the just one, and again, him paying for the sins of the world is a matter of just restoring life. And when you live by faith, you do not surrender to any of the fear and therefore the scapegoating, because people they fit in with the groups that scapegoat others because they want the group to protect them. And those who don't surrender to Christ, they always end up sacrificing someone else, and they also end up sacrificing their own well-being also, because they don't have protection from the predatory system, because the system is, as we just mentioned, is not willing or able to protect them. If it was willing, it wouldn't be capable, because it's not going to prioritize them. But it's not even willing anyway. So when you live by faith, you trust God in every situation. So there's certain things that are not an option, and life and health is always prioritized, and you know that God will always keep you in the situation. And that's what the world will also notice, that there's certain people who are not involved in this scapegoating thing, and this abusive thing, and they don't just go along blindly with lies to get validation. And again, when the gospel was spread, it was just poor people, poor Judeans, who were speaking about the resurrection of Christ, and the big military of the Roman Empire wasn't able to shut it down. So again, people would notice the power that comes from the faith, and not just the power, but also the justice, because people see power and they get scared, but then they'll also realize that it's also better. Christ is better and more powerful.
Indeed.
Because I mean, in the world, you got strength that bullies things that are nice and so forth, but God is more powerful and also right and pro-life and so forth. So when the world sees that, then they will say, why am I serving the satanic system? Whether they understand it's a Catholic Masonic system, or they just see it as evil, or they just see it as bad people, they will say, why am I serving this system? And they'll follow the example. And as Paul says, you should always be willing to give an answer to those who want to know why you have hope. Because obviously God's people have hope that the world doesn't have.
And that is why we ought to walk in power. That's why, from all the people on the earth, believers should be the most ambitious of all. Why? Because we know that we'll be resurrected in immortal physical bodies, and it will be on the earth forever with Christ in joy. So we know that our end destination is life, and that physical death is just a small pause that we won't even notice that it happened. Okay, so we should be the most ambitious of all. It should be worldlings that are stuck in 9 to 5s, not daring to go outside because it may be the last day. We believers, we have 120 years in these temporary bodies. We should make the full of it. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I think it's good for us to close this live stream. And folks, you can check Nirhir's channel. He will be uploading more coming days, and I'll be making more live streams coming days. All of you, keep on agreeing with